Dopamine swipe. Dopamine swipe. Follow us.
Welcome back to the 817 podcast. It is EJ and Jimmy in the house. Hope you guys are having a lovely week. What's up, man?
Not too much. How you been doing?
Doing well, man. Just working. Watching what's happening at Fort Worth ISD, just trying to see what's going to happen. Because I know a lot of people are concerned about that. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to a lot of things. But how was your weekend?
It was pretty good. This was the first week that I was the full-time stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
Even though, Brooke's still working remotely, but I had the full-time dad duties, and it was good. We're not really daytime nappers, but that's okay.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad that you're having that experience. You guys look great at Black Coffee. I saw Black Coffee reshare the posts with her in her Panther City onesie.
Yeah, it's a great little walk. It's about an hour round trip, so really easy.
Dude, I want to do that walk with you. Now I'm curious.
Yeah, it's so nice. Bring the dogs.
Yeah. Now we're talking. My only child at the moment is my dog, so might stay that way. So we'll see. So let's get into it. So we're gonna do a couple short stories first. Then we have some big stories, and of course our wins and losses for the week. So the first story is really around. It seems like an beginning story that's going to have a lot more stories coming up, but the Fort Worth Police Crime Lab may have violated policies related to handling of DNA evidence for as long as 2 years. The violations, if substantiated, have the potential to affect every case that the one crime lab liaison worked on in the entire time period. Tarrant County's visiting judge, Elizabeth Berry, filed a 32-page report in August that shares details of the possible violations at the Fort Worth Police Department Crime Laboratory. The judge began investigating the lab by calling employees to testify in her court after a defendant in a murder trial filed a motion to suppress DNA evidence in his case because he said it was tampered with.
It's not good. Not good for community trust of the police. The testimonies that have been shared so far seem pretty clear that this was happening. And who knows if it's only 2 years? Like, think of all of the cases that could be reopened from this. So the step that they're sort of skipping through is getting permission to use the entirety of DNA evidence, which usually standard practice would be to just use a portion of it so that if it gets contested, there's still more to go back and test again. And there's a form that you essentially have to sign, and the supervisor here was essentially telling the lab tech, go ahead and sign it yourself, like, let's just do this. It seems like it's been a couple years since the whistle was blown and then sort of pushed under the rug. So yeah. It seems like it's at least been happening for 2 years. Who knows how long beforehand? That's a lot of cases that could be affected by this. And something like this coming out as there's already a lot of tension between civilians and the police. It's definitely not a good look. Even in the same week that 2 more people have died in Tarrant County jails, like the sheriff is up for re-election this year and has generally seemed to do a very poor job of managing Fort Worth prisons and Tarrant County prisons. This is just sort of another thing to tack onto there of, is this the guy we want managing this in our county? You feel like it's an intro story too, right? Like this is the kind of the start of many stories that we're going to be hearing about this. Yeah, it definitely seems like the article was incomplete, not in a bad way, but just in the door's opening on this and there will be more information to come. So we'll continue tracking it as more information comes out, but it seems like this is the beginning of opening up a can of worms. Yeah. Well, I mean, we also have here our second story we really want to hit on is community oversight on the Fort Worth PD. And so a story was recently coming out about how
Fort Worth PD is not happy with how the community insight and the surveys and things are going. Looking at the story and basically kind of giving you the intro here, there was a wide gap that exists between Fort Worth residents' hope for community police oversight and what city officers want. A preliminary report on surveys from Fort Worth Police Monitor reveals that, both officers and the public agree to have a goal in the community of oversight and being aware of advanced affairs and the professional policing approaches. Majority of officers say no community oversight is needed and it should not involve the investigation of complaints or provide recommendations. According to a survey of officers, a survey of Fort Worth residents show that the opposite is the case. The majority want community oversight. So there just seems this really tug and pull in this story.
Yeah. So Police Oversight Monitor Kim Neal was appointed in the last year, 18 months, and her goal is essentially to further a lot of the things that have come out of Tatiana Jefferson's murder. Part of that started out with a survey a month and a half ago that a few thousand residents filled out. Honestly, not a terrible turnout for people who you think are tuned into what's going on. But from that survey, 87% of the community said on a sliding scale of 5 choices that community oversight was important in some capacity, whereas less than 30% of police officers said the same thing, and only 3.3% said community oversight was very important. Meanwhile, 69.5% of those in the police department that were polled said de-escalation training is necessary, and more than half voted a need for transparency, community engagement, and understanding of the role and actions of police. This is just sort of the first information that's coming out about this survey. But what it sounds like to me is that police officers want the benefits of community oversight, aka transparency, community engagement, understanding of their role and actions, but they don't actually want police oversight from the community. Police officers want the benefits without having somebody infringing on their job. I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see what comes out of this survey action-wise, because the police department's been under fire. We talked recently about the new police chief search. This community oversight committee is supposed to help a lot in progressing the police force in general. I am encouraged that 70% say that they need de-escalation training. Like, that's some self-awareness that I don't think we've seen from the police department recently. But you can't want the benefits of community oversight without any of the actions behind it.
What is your take on where we are right now with the Tatiana Jefferson case?
I mean, it seems like this is sort of the first thing that,
because Breonna Taylor got her family, they got compensated pretty significantly.
Which that compensation comes from taxpayers.
Yeah.
So it's literally taxpayers paying for your police to murder people in their homes, which is how it's been forever. And that's part of the issue with police officers associations. I think a couple months ago, the committee behind evaluating the Fort Worth PD came out with their recommendations. It doesn't seem like Fort Worth PD is being very quick to adopt any of those. This might be the first thing that actually tangibly comes out of it. So it'll be interesting to see what concrete actions for the department come from this survey.
Yeah, I mean, would you? I know now that I'm aware that it comes from us, our tax dollars, but still, I guess we're hiring police to be community officers to manage the law. So it is kind of like a community mistake. So we're paying the price because these people are funded by us. But you say that there should be other approaches to how we fund this.
I would choose for my tax dollars to go towards something other than that, and I think it's indicative of a larger issue in our current society where a lot of people in power are looking to put band-aids on problems instead of actually fixing them so that they can continue to say that they're broken.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things. We're not root causing the issues of police violence or of what the community needs to not need policing as much. We're just continuing to throw money at the problem, which is a band-aid, so that it can continue to be broken, so that people in power can profit off of it. Any industry you look into that should be government run, that has been privatized, that's what's going on. I mean, we've seen it a lot with the post office recently.
Yeah, and I was at the Coffee Folk and sitting there with a friend who, African American influencer, I would say, in Fort Worth, and he had no idea about Prop A or the sales tax supporting police for the next 10 years. He was like freaking out about it. I'm like, it was a little bit too late. This is why you got to read the news and stay up to date, and which inspired us to do this podcast, which kudos. I've had friends text us saying, hey, they got subscriptions to Star Telegram. And so honestly, that is why we kind of started this. So these things are important.
Stay informed. You can dictate where your tax dollars go.
Speaking of like dollars and not supporting our people, Texas bars and distilleries ripped Governor Abbott for leaving them out and saying it's an unacceptable reopening plan. Yeah, what is your thoughts here around how we're opening restaurants to 75% and still bars have to remain closed?
I empathize so much with bar owners and distillery owners. It is wild to me. So this week, Abbott announced that restaurants could go to 75%, gyms could go to 75%, amongst other places. I imagine that there's still a level of social distancing that's required, but they can get up to 75% occupancy. And he explicitly said during the press conference that bars are not included in this. A lot of bars are going through the process with TABC right now to get converted into restaurants so that they can reopen, but it's not fair in any way. A couple studies have come out recently showing that restaurants are one of the most dangerous places for the spreading of COVID because everybody takes off their mask the entire time that they are there. Being in remotely close contact inside for 45 minutes to an hour without a mask is how this disease spreads. If restaurants can continue to open more and more, like bars should be able to be open. You can't have one without the other. In my opinion, it should be neither. Like we should still be pushing curbside and to go. But if you're going to keep promoting one, you can't do it without the other. The other aspect of this is places that have their mixed beverage permit. So that's places that are serving you liquor-based drinks. Pay an extra 6.25% tax on every alcoholic beverage they sell. As Texas has lost a lot of sales tax revenue this year, why are we refusing to take in our highest sales tax revenue driver? Like, it just does not remotely make sense to me that we shouldn't be using bars to help recover economically.
Does it have to do with also the conservativeness of Governor Abbott? And I mean, even today, like I still get heated about, sometimes unfortunately going to Target too early and I go there, go buy some beer and I can't buy some beer at a certain time. And why is there still that conservative play? Do people still really care about liquor in bars like that?
I don't know. It's so weird. But I mean, a couple weeks ago, like we visited 12 states, Texas and New Mexico were the only ones that allowed you to do alcohol to go. It seems like it's not about the alcohol. I don't understand the Sunday before noon thing. Like that doesn't make a difference. Like, who are you protecting before noon on a Sunday by not allowing people to buy alcohol in stores? I really don't know if that's still a driving factor of this. I think Texas in general does have a lot of archaic rules around alcohol, and getting a liquor license is so convoluted. So I think it just more revolves around us not adapting, and I mean, in some areas having too big of government oversight. by people who act like government oversight is a bad thing.
Because there's no strong data that shows the difference between bars and restaurants in the sense of catching cases, like catching COVID, right?
Right. Well, and part of that might be they haven't really been able to study bars because they've been closed everywhere.
Yeah.
But restaurants are as dangerous of a place as indoor dining. Outdoor dining is different, but indoor dining is like the number one riskiest thing to do. You can't. Well, how are you going to push that and not allow bars to open?
And you're seeing there's bars transferring to restaurants by serving some kind of food in some capacity, popcorn, cheese plates, whatever they can get away with.
What a waste, you know? Like what a waste of energy, time, and money for them to go through that process to serve you a couple slices of pineapple. It's stupid.
Just for me, I think that our bar scene is such a cool part of Fort Worth. Like what I love about Fort Worth is when I curate stops for friends who visit or families who visit, and we go to Thompson's, we get down to Southside, then you go down to West Mag, and you're just working your way through all these amazing bars. And then a lot of these bars extended themselves to prepare for all the growth in Fort Worth. And then what you're seeing is the growth in Fort Worth from a real estate perspective continue being strong even through this time. I just hope everyone applies to the CARES Act funding. They're going to get benefit of the doubt. If you're a bar, if you're a restaurant, this funding is for you. So please make sure that you're utilizing that capacity and taking advantage of that.
Yeah, we want to see, especially these locally owned and operated bars that are invested in the community. Like, we want to see y'all thrive. Make sure you apply. I believe the deadline is the first week of October, and you can get up to 3 months of lost revenue.
Yeah. I think this was a kind of a slower week in Fort Worth when it comes to like big stories compared to last week. We had a lot to like really big things to talk about, but I think this is a big topic just on, and I think this shows case why Fort Worth is important, because I just see Fort Worth as like an example of America. Like we are the state of Nebraska and a drizzle of California, and we just get to see the national dynamics held in Tarrant County. And I think that's what makes Tarrant County so awesome and a great place to live, because of that portfolio of people. And so what you're seeing that come out of most is education.
Yeah.
And the Fort Worth school officials may decide to extend online learning despite voting against the extension last week. On the agenda this Tuesday, the Fort Worth Independent School District Board of Trustees meeting will discuss the possibility to extend online learning until October 30th. The transition will be optional in-person classes, which will be completed till November 2nd. The upcoming board meeting is 5:30 p.m. and it's going to be available Zoom. I'm going to be checking in. Hopefully it's not 7+ hours again. And families are going to be able to share their testament. This has just gotten really out of hand, and I'm really interested to hear how you think about it. I think they're doing online learning as well as they can from the technology platforms they're using, the curations that they're doing, how they prepared their teachers. But there's a tough dynamic here between parents and teachers.
Yeah. I mean, we really empathize with parents and teachers in this situation. Like, this is hard and not ideal for anybody. I feel personally that Fort Worth ISD has handled this really well, not necessarily in the decision they've made, although I do agree with how they've handled it up to this point, but they have been very open in communication, allowed a lot of leeway for people to converse about this. I mean, the meeting last Tuesday was 7 hours. Like, I'm surprised they're starting it at 5:30, knowing that the potential of that could happen again. Basically, the way that they spoke about it on Tuesday, it felt like it was going to be bigger than a 5-4 decision to stick with October 5th until Vinny Tejeda, I believe I'm pronouncing his last name right.
He's like our little Dr. Fauci.
Yeah,
he's our man.
He's basically Tarrant County's Dr. Fauci.
Yeah.
And he came out and said, I'm personally not sending my kids back to school until there is a vaccine. And that seemed to open the ears of other people on the board deciding this. And that's really why the vote and the discussion took 7 hours. Right now, we're all waiting to see if there is a spike from Labor Day, which, based on the pictures that I've seen of a lot of people, I only assume that that's coming. We've started to see the numbers flatline over the last week after they had been decreasing, which is obviously not a great sign. But that's why originally why they chose October 5th, to give a month for this cycle of COVID to see if we saw that spike, because we are starting to see the indicators of that potentially happening is why they're recalling this vote again to reevaluate if October 30th is a better date. At that point, like, do it for the whole semester, like give kids the consistency of what's happening. We've seen a big petition starting to go around about putting kids back in school.
Over 2,500 parents have signed it already.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
Yeah. That's a good amount.
That is a good amount of people.
Well, yeah, because they have the Texas. The state just came out with the COVID-19 counting of educators and students who have COVID, and they said that was roughly 2,000 students and parents, and saying that was around 1% of our educational population in our state.
Yeah, so over 2,000 students and over 2,000 teachers. So over 4,000 people total after a month of it being back in school, not even statewide.
Yeah, most of our big districts are virtual.
Yeah, they're not even open yet. The problem I have with the petition going around, and you've mentioned it before, of like, if you don't see a diverse group of people supporting something, like you're probably supporting the wrong thing.
Yeah,
and
totally.
The people that I know that I have seen share it, one, have the resources to make at-home learning be able to be done well, and two, support the people that have failed at containing the virus. And we were talking about this before we went on. I think a symptom of white privilege that does not get talked about enough is that, in general, white people do not face the consequences of their actions. They see it as a me versus them thing instead of a me versus me. And if you are supporting the people who have failed at containing the virus, and you are going out consistently without a mask, sending your kids out without a mask, you are literally the one being destructive and not allowing kids to go back into school. Like, do not sign this petition when you are the symptom. This isn't me versus them. This is you versus you. That it just gets me fired up.
This is the part, is like, I love parents. I love my mom. I'm a huge mama's boy, people. But my mom doesn't know the best decisions for everyone. Even if we know what's best for our kids. My mom did not know what was best for me completely. And my mom has a lot of kinks and things that she did that was like, man, like if science and facts, like those people. And that's where I respect the superintendent, is that the superintendent, in such a hostile environment right now, I'm interested to see what the sternness he's going to provide, because I feel like he's been pretty stern in saying, hey, I'm not going to let these outside noise from emotional parents who are tired but are not seeing the full picture break me. I've been impressed at how he's done that. And when our people talk in the health department of Tarrant County, and they talk about public health, he sticks to it, and he sticks to his guns there, and he supports. And that has to continue to be the play, is that if they're not willing to send their kids until there's a vaccine, that is saying something. And that's the hardest part. That's where I get with parents, is the learning loss that their kids are receiving by being home doing this work. So this is why this is such a hard piece. And what also the research is showing is if you don't have any other symptoms or other things wrong with you, the odds of this virus killing you is very low, especially of you being young. And so these it's just a really bad 2 weeks. But now we go to the teachers, which might have these other symptoms, who are at risk to COVID-19. And so that's why it's such like it's a play of what's most important is growth and education of our future kids, or safety and health of these people who educate those people. And I get how this is hard.
Yeah. And I short term, like, it is so hard. This is about long-term decision making. And I wish I had written down her name, but I saw a woman post on Facebook and a couple other social media avenues of hands-on science activities that she would be hosting in Trinity Park. You could sign up to go. You had to wear a mask. Like, there are ways that we can help supplement education loss right now. And it doesn't seem like we are fully fleshing those out. That's a bummer. This isn't a go or not go thing. This is, how can we be creative to long-term create solutions that are better for our kids than the learning that they were already getting? Like, let's use the technology available to us to create a better system moving forward than the system we had now. We know that Fort Worth ISD and Tarrant County as a whole's public education system is not great. It's not top notch.
Yep.
How can we use this opportunity to create long-term solutions? And I'd so get that it's hard. And like, if you are a parent, like, we are sorry that you are in this situation right now.
Yeah.
But we are all sacrificing things, and creating spaces for COVID to spread is not how we get out of this. And that's not how we reward those sacrifices. That's how we continue to have to make more and more sacrifices.
Yeah. And going back to what you said earlier, which I thought was eloquently done, is if you're not making the sacrifice, if you don't feel like you have made any sacrifices through this time, then there's the problem.
Yeah.
There's a problem here. If you don't feel impacted by COVID-19, if you don't feel hurt because of loved ones, or that things are going on with schools or your business, and you're walking around without a mask and you're playing power control and look at me during this time, I am unfazed, that is the problem. And so you said that really well. And I even think we have to look at this as an opportunity, because the future of work is working from home. The future of work is working from your laptop anywhere you want.
Working from your phone.
Yeah. And so this is the future. And the future of the way adults learn, more people will learn from podcasts, more people learn from audiobooks, from reading their own a curation of books that they choose to. This is where we have to teach kids how to curate their own learning, but then also show them what adult life is like. Adult life is becoming more on your terms. And this is how kids, when you look at Facebook, Google, and all these companies saying, hey, you know what? We actually like this. We're actually not renewing our headquarters, and we're actually shrinking down our office space. We're only going to make going into work 2 to 3 days a week. You know what that sounds like? Hybrid learning.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about long-term with colleges. How many students don't make it through their freshman year of college because they were not prepared to be that responsible that quickly? Like, these are opportunities to prepare our kids for long-term success. And it's not just in education, but in every aspect of life. We need to be looking at what was broken, how COVID exposed the brokenness of those systems, and how do we create long-term solutions. And so we know that it sucks. Like, we have sacrificed things along this last 7 months. We know it sucks. We know everybody is tired. Kids dealing with depression, anxiety, adults dealing with depression and anxiety. These point to larger societal issues that sending your kid back to school do not solve.
Yeah. And again, these are the same parents and the same people who were complaining how the system was broken. The system is outdated. And now you have a once in a lifetime opportunity to showcase, okay, what was broken is now open to discussion of how do we make a futuristic public school system? How do we make a more less about butts and seats and schools being funded by attendance and how many people can I have in a seat, even if I don't need them there, or if their parents want to go on vacation, or we want to do learning on the go. This is the opportunity for us to actually reimagine that education we all talked about when we felt like the old system was a little bit archaic. And now you wanting to rush back in to just go back to that because now you're afraid of this change and this vulnerability and uncertainty. It is not the right answer. We have to see this as an opportunity to finally create the new modern school systems that we want, where every kid has a phone. You know, I saw something where like 84% of students have a phone. They are spending more time on their phone. And this is the way of the future. Kids playing video games, kids being interested in those video games, them progressing in those video games. Now, how do we get these kids to progress in their own lives and feel like their achievements in native reality rather than virtual reality is equally as enjoyable, and they're taking control of that experience for themselves? And as parents and as community members, we have to curate those things for students, because this is not just the future of work. Education always copies and pastes work. We started public education, because we needed factory workers. We now, if you look at work today, it's working from home. It's working from your phone. And we do not talk about mobile engagement, or we don't even talk about on-the-go learning with kids and taking control of that. And how does a job interview look like? How does working with people who you don't ever see in person look like? And this is our time to showcase that we can teach kids 21st century workforce skills. Yeah.
Practical curriculum, and not whatever this 1776 executive order was that was just signed to brainwash our kids into. Our history is whitewashed enough. Like, we don't need to incorporate more of that into it.
Absolutely, man. And so we'll see. I'm going to be tuning in for a little bit. Kudos to the young reporter who's been doing the reporting from Star Telegram. So kudos to him to making this information quick. He also recently did the South Hills High School, I believe it was South, recently, about COVID cases are happening in a specific school. And there was also reports that, the principal and the secretary aren't wearing masks and things like that. So he's just doing a great job.
Wear your mask.
Yeah, I feel like while editing all these podcasts, I feel like, man, Jimmy, Jimmy, you might become the mask guy. I was like, hey, you're the guy who always makes sure that it comes back down to mask, which is true, what's frustrating. And if you're upset and you're frustrated about COVID-19, and you're upset about where we are in the world economically, realize it's because a president waited to March to make decisions about something he knew in February. And he knew how dangerous it was. If you're upset that the economy had to shut down, be upset that we have a president who creates masculinity, who can't wear a mask. All we had to do was do what we're doing now. Before, we would have never had a close like that.
Wear your mask.
And it was that simple. Just like you wear your seatbelt to drive. All right, let's make this happen.
Just like you don't walk around naked.
So let's get to our wins and losses. Really kind of nationally on our wins and losses, I feel, for me. But I'm going to let you jump into your wins and losses, because I feel yours are ones that I feel like are super niche and really hit your soul.
Yeah, so my win is that the Dallas Stars are playing for the Stanley Cup. Exciting thing for the area. I personally am from South Florida, and the Lightning are the only team that I've ever seen lift a championship trophy in person when I was 10 or 11 years old. And so go Lightning, but for the area, I think it's an exciting thing that the Stars are playing for a title. They have this really young core that people thought were going to do this a few years ago, and injuries, inconsistency, all of that has held them off, but they finally put it all together in their bubble up in Canada, and congratulations to them. I hope they lose, but I think that's an exciting thing for DFW sports fans.
I'm truly loving these bubble sports, to be honest. Like, these games, I mean, even basketball. I mean, the hockey playoffs through and through. NFL. I mean, these games have been great. I mean, but that's not a bubble. But like this whole idea that we need fans in the stadium is kind of overhyped.
Yeah, and that'll lead me to one of my two losses. First loss is that TCU announced that they would not be hosting early voting locations this year because they didn't think they could do it safely. But whenever they have a home game, they're trying to bring 12,000 fans into the stadium. So, I mean, let's talk about consistency there. Like, maybe these decisions were being made by separate parties, but somebody has to be in there to talk about the optics of this. The University of Georgia actually got so hated on Twitter last week that they reversed their decision to not host early polling locations. So if you're a TCU student, make sure you look up where you can go vote early. Make sure you go vote. It's not going to be on campus. My other loss is that this week, Doughboy Donuts announced that they were leaving Fort Worth and moving down to Burleson. I know it's still Tarrant County, but it is a bummer to lose a Black-owned business that was doing a lot for the community, still offering curbside pickup, really going out of their way to make sure they were accommodating people. I hope that they'll come back to Fort Worth one day, but in the next few weeks, they'll be moving out of their spot on Camp Bowie and moving down to Burleson. That's a sad day.
Yeah, I got to go grab one. Before because I've never had Doughboys. Yeah,
make sure you get some. I remember back in their food truck days when they used to go park on Magnolia all the time. It's sad to lose a Black-owned business like that, and a business that does a lot in the community and does a lot to help elevate other Black voices in the community. So hopefully we can continue that charge and help
for HEB.
Yeah, they do have, man, HEB is great.
Yeah, right. Like I always say, I don't know how we can make it work, but if we could get a HEB in Eastside, I don't need a bougie Central Market. I just need a regular HEB. I would be so fired up. I have a friend who works at HEB. He works at corporate HEB out of San Antonio. And I'm like, yo, what I got to do to get a real HEB up here in Fort Worth, Eastside? We would love it in Eastside.
The number of times that my wife and I have reached out to HEB to try and tell them that Fort Worth proper needs an HEB is maybe embarrassing. But you get used to rejection.
Yeah, but I'll make sure, even at their new location, Doughboys, go hit the HEB and then go grab some donuts.
Maybe get some babes.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, make it a day down in Burleson.
Full food plate that I will deeply enjoy. So here we go. So my win. So my win is this was in the Texas Tribune, and that was the National Democratic Super PAC is pumping over $6 million in the fight for Texas House majority. The group Forward Majority plans to spend $6.2 million across 18 races that will likely determine who controls the lower chamber in January, according to an announcement first shared with the Texas Tribune. The money will go toward TV ads, digital ads, and mail-in to the districts. So we have a once in a generation opportunity, people, to establish a Democratic majority and cement Texas. And this is just a big battleground, specifically in Fort Worth, as we have 2 House seats up for grabs. And so I just think this is just really powerful to see national people investing in Texas, which usually doesn't happen. We usually Texas isn't in this conversation. But now national people think we can do some things.
Yeah, I think that's huge that a national organization is investing that much here. We talked some about it last week, but the Texas House that is elected this year is going to be able to redraw districts, could totally change the future of Texas politics, which would lead to being able to flip seats in the national House. It's crazy. I didn't think that 2020 would be when this potential flip would be happening, but it's crazy to see this money being invested here.
The Senate elections are going to be really close, and I think the whole president election we're going to lose to Trump still, but I still think
in Texas.
Yeah. But I think that the amount of seats that the Republican Party is defending nationally is a lot.
Yeah.
They got to protect a lot
Yeah.
to stay majority.
And I think that we will say make sure you vote a lot. That's regardless of who you are voting for.
Yeah.
Like, make sure you are taking part in the democratic process. That is what makes the U.S. unique, or traditionally has made it unique. Like, make sure you vote every election, local elections, state elections, national elections. They all matter a ton. And maybe you've been in a place where you have not recognized the effect of elections on yourself, or you haven't had to recognize the effect of elections on yourself, but like, that's in the past. Like, make sure that you are educated on what is going on and that you go out and vote. It is important to use your voice.
Which, speaking of someone who used their voice, this is going to my loss, and just really kind of overall how much it impacted just the feel of 2020 is the loss of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and just how an amazing woman she was, what she advocated for, and now just what's up at risk for the country. I think that has been probably my biggest anxiety over the weekend, and just maybe why I kind of felt meh all weekend is just another example of how one person can make a difference. And so that's the loss for me.
Yeah, and abortion is obviously a hot button topic. It's it's probably the only issue that has as many one issue voters as it does. But outside of that, women being able to hold a job while pregnant and have maternity leave, women being able to get a bank account without a man, women being able to sign a mortgage without a man, like, these are all things that RBG played a massive role in the fight for equality and in passing those, and really wrote a lot of landmark decisions for our Supreme Court. Regardless of how you feel about abortion, she is a legend that we have lost. And I mean, she is 87 years old. She's been battling cancer for years now. Like, she fought to the very end. She should be an inspiration for people of what it looks like to fight for true equality. I mean, her and John Lewis both passing this year really is just, those are just a couple landmark losses across the last century of civil rights and women's rights movements in the United States.
Yeah. And I mean, but what's been crazy is the passion that has been activated that I felt like we were losing, because freaking humans, man, we just get exhausted, and our endurance and attention to problems is, we care for like 48 hours and then we move on. But like nearly $50 million have been sent out to candidates across the country because of RBG's passing away, people stepping up, people doing more canvassing, more calls, more texts to support their politicians, and really empowering people to get out there and realize how important it is that they do something.
Yeah. And I mean, there was an interview with an anonymous Republican pollster basically saying, like, they didn't know if women in majority were going to show up to vote for Joe Biden, but they think that women will show up to vote for Ruth. And even though she has passed, her legacy will live on for a long time, and really makes this election all the more important.
Yeah, and you even said, I mean, I think this is a great, I know we're getting to time, is you even said that you think not only Ruth passing is causing this growth in donations, you're also saying is how the president, Mitch McConnell, and their party handled talking about filling her seat.
Yeah, I
really sparks.
I feel like it was not a mystery that the people who blocked voting on Obama's appointment in 2016 were going to flip. Like, we know who they are. Like, they show themselves to be that way. But being so forthright about it an hour after it was announced that she had passed, I think really motivated people because it did not give anyone time to grieve or process, but it just pushed people into immediate, fired up, emotional action.
Yep.
We knew what they were going to do. If they had waited 2 or 3 weeks to say it, then we're in a place where, like you just said, humans, we forget about things. We, move on to the next thing. Like, there would have been passion behind that, but there would not have been this level of the highest fundraising hours ever for the Democratic Party. 3 hours in a row, $48 million raised in less than a day, like, to be distributed to competitive Senate races across the country. Like, I feel like it really motivated and fired up people, which is what Ruth would have wanted. Like, we know she fought till her last day. We know that she would have wanted people to fight for her legacy.
Yeah, and I think just something to close here is just realize that we are not 40-ish days away from
the election is now.
Exactly.
Another time I will go on a rant about how we need to reframe election season, but the election is happening now.
Yeah, so do what you can, register to vote. There's still time to do that here in Texas. Make sure you're doing that. Take friends, talk about it. People need to know. And so thank you for listening to the 817 podcast, guys. You guys have been great. Really a lot of exciting things coming up as we get closer to the election day. And we're going to have some really cool opportunities and guests that we're going to be bringing on. So really appreciate all of you. Hope you have a great week.
Much love. Thanks for listening.